Where do I want to start off this video at? That's a good question. I guess I'll go to Fontaine. Fontaine's, it's kind of pretty. I'm a bit of a Fontaine hater. But it has a few pretty, the villages, specifically, the villages are really pretty. So it wouldn't take so goddamn long to load. Hello. If you've ever tried to get into artifact optimization, but been scared off by equations that look like this, or this, or this, I don't blame you, because those equations are scary, and I don't know what they mean. I'm here to tell you that you don't need to know what they mean. Genshin is a very complicated game, but I think that a lot of that is kind of its own fault. It does a pretty bad job of teaching a lot of its finer mechanics, and I want to show that off by showing how easy it is really to learn the systems that are behind what controls your damage and begin to change your artifacts and optimize to account for those systems. To show you why you don't need all those big scary formulas, I'm going to show you this big scary formula. This is the game's general talent damage formula. This runs every single time you hit an enemy with something that isn't like an electro reaction or one of those cards from Abyss or events that give you those shockwaves of damage. This is your normal everyday damage. And the first big thing that you can kind of do to defang it is realize that we're not in math class. We're playing a fucking video game. There's an equal sign, but it doesn't mean that you have to, do the equation. You don't have to solve for it. The point of Genshin isn't to do exactly as much damage as you need to clear content in exactly as much time as possible. It's to blow it up as fast as you can. So yeah, this is a big scary formula, but because we're not actually trying to find the solution, we can ignore a lot of it. First things first, this guy's called a sigma notation. I looked it up and I tried to figure out what it did. I couldn't figure it out. All the papers that I could find were just way too advanced language for me to understand. So I can't tell you what it does do, but I can tell you what it doesn't do. It doesn't vary. It does the same thing every time. This sigma notation, whatever it is something that the player can't influence. So guess what? We can just ignore it. And after you remove that big scary symbol, you see that all that's left is just multiplying and adding. You have the base damage of your hit, which is just like the scaling of your talent and whatever stat that it scales on multiplied together, times the base damage multiplier, which not a lot of characters actually have a base damage multiplier. Off the top of my head, Farina has one, Nuvalette has one. Wanderer and Risley's skills count as base damage multipliers. They're like kind of a rare, very kit-specific thing. Then additive base damage bonus, which that's things like Shenhe's Icy Quills or Yunjin's like normal attack buffing thing. Shilonen has some stuff like that in her constellations. That's a recent example I can think of. After that, you can see that everything is just multiplying to. Simplifying this equation down to its bare essentials, you find two numbers in the menu and multiply them together. You calculate for two rare and character-specific bonuses that you probably don't even have. And then you find the rest of your stats and you multiply everything together. This all is just guesstimation, and I've removed some steps, so you're not gonna get an exact damage number by plugging all your numbers into this formula, but you can get an approximation, and more notably, you can compare setups to each other. Applying some basic rules of algebra, you'll learn that when given limited opportunities to increase your stats, you'll see better results building multiple stats evenly rather than one stat all in. This is why your basic recommended setup on most DPS characters is attack damage crit, or, defense damage crit, HP damage crit, sub in whatever stat. It's because guide makers don't want to assume what units you have in your teams and what buffs you're receiving, so they're giving you a good general recommendation that will do decently in every team. So actually, you know what? I have a team here. I've been dying to show this off. I'm a Risley main. I love him. So let's just let's use it and let's check it out with attack damage crit. Risley, he's an attack scaler. He only scales off of attack. You don't see any other, stats listed in his talents. He does cryo damage. Surprise, surprise. He's a cryo user. Just in case you legitimately don't know who this is. Cryo has a reaction with Pyro, Melt. It just makes your hit deal more damage, and it scales with Elemental Mastery. This is a team that is built to get Wriothesley a lot of big damage melts. Your normal run-of-the-mill build on him. Let's do a run against my favorite boy! The vast and unyielding Mountain King himself. Oh wait, this isn't necessary. This is just because I think it's funny to use the purple toothpick on Xiangling. Okay, let's get this showcase on the road. Oh wait, I think I'm right. Aura. No! What are you doing, Shona? Okay, whatever. I can't do this. Why am I like unable to play against this guy? I'm just missing everything. I'm whiffing. I'm the whiffer. Okay, well, I missed that crit, and that was responsible for why he didn't die there. Anyways, EM time. Mr. Attack percent himself has been swapped to double EM. And I know that the crit stat, or really just the substats in general, are both pretty significantly better. Actually, never mind. They're pretty similar on the timepiece because I'm overcapping on crit, so I lose a little value there. The goblet is pretty significantly better though. Easy. It's actually easy. See? I promise it's easy. I did it with no trouble. Despite the severe skill issue, you can pretty clearly see that double EM Wrio does more damage than the traditional Wrio build in this team. We can run through this team and figure that out. What is making Elemental Mastery so potent here? Why is it so much better than attack percent and damage percent? Obviously, the attack percent is kind of negated by Bennett. So Bennett is a mainstay in like half the teams in the game. You guys are probably all sick of him, but I have only recently fallen like completely in love with Bennett. You guys already know Bennett is good. I don't have to tell you Bennett is good. But Bennett isn't just good because he like, I don't know, makes your can each hit for like 20,000 more damage. He's good because he gives you so much attack that you won't ever need any more. Bennett makes attack percent sources almost irrelevant with how much damage or how much attack he gives, therefore making other stats in an equation where you want to, you know, balance everything to get as high as possible become a lot more valuable. Especially if you're running him on Noblesse, which is just like the stupid cherry on top. Which, side note, you don't need to run Noblesse Bennett. Maidens and what's that other set called? It's like is it Song of Days Past? It is Song of Days Past. Maidens and Song are both pretty good options in Farina teams. Bennett gives you a shitload of attack. That's his thing. And while it may not seem like it, we're actually getting a lot of secret damage percent from a few different sources. But for now, the only thing that the menu shows is the 32% that I'm getting from Lost Prayer, which, don't get me wrong, it's part of it, but even though it says 32% in the menu, I calculate that to be more like 16%. Because the stacks take a little bit to build up, you're just not going to be dealing damage with all of your stacks all the time. So this is our very first instance of the art of guesstimation, which is like basically just my entire process. It's all guesstimation. I'm just seeing what feels right and balancing things accordingly. Moving on, we get a little bit of damage percent from our two-piece artifact set. And it's also a good time to note that different types of damage bonuses you get, they're all added together. So the 32% elemental from Lost Prayer and the 15% normal and charged attack from the Hunter set, they're not getting multiplied together. They're just getting added to a flat 47%. But yeah, all the damage he's doing is normal and charged attack damage. I just don't burst on Wriothesley, frankly. I don't think he has any in his passive talents. This, like I mentioned before, this is that special, like, base multiplier. So it's I guess this is its own damage percent in a sense. This might be normal damage percent. I've tried to find out, but there's not a lot of information on Wriothesley. Big surprise, I know. But yeah, he doesn't get... if this is damage percent, I'd be mad because it's a 50% that gets boosted to 200 at C1. How could this happen to me? I made my mistakes, got nowhere to run, the night goes on. So he has these two sources of fairly low, but still universal damage percent. Whereas he just doesn't have any elemental mastery on any pieces that aren't the two pieces that have it as main stats. Not only is he getting damage percent from his two-piece set and his weapon, but he's also getting 40% from, I clicked on the wrong thing, Shilonen's artifact set. Even though he doesn't have a damage percent goblet, if I set up the team right, he's naturally going to be rocking around 70% damage bonus. So I made the decision to just drop both the attack percent and the cryo damage goblet, and I ended up with this, which his normal strikes may not be doing as much damage, but it's not a lot, and his charged attacks and his normal attacks that melt do a lot more damage. As you can see, that really is just the long and short of it. I figured out my primary damage dealer. Wriothesley is an attack scaling cryo unit that deals normal and charged attack damage. He can trigger pretty large melts, which benefit from elemental mastery. And he, like most other damaging units in the game, can make use of crit. So, what have I done in this team? I've gotten Bennett for attack, Shilonen for damage percent, along with, you know, a few other little things on the side. And then on my artifacts, for the substats, I've gone, obviously, you know, as you do, for the crit substats, and for my main stats, elemental mastery. And that's really all there is to it. It's just figure out what you need, and then get those things, and you'll start doing way more damage than you maybe were before. This game is really, really obtuse, and that makes it pretty easy to play it mindlessly. With this, I want to be showing people that it's just not as hard as people think it is. Maybe I sound a little angry, maybe I kind of am, because, like, Jesus Christ, Hoyo, this stuff, it's not that difficult to explain. Anyways, moving on to some of the weirder stats. I'm gonna fight some bosses in the background so you guys don't get bored. Res, Shred, and Crit are often held with, like, a pretty high standard in this game, I guess. Crit is kind of, you know, the end-all be-all of the artifact grind game. Double crit pieces are the goal, colloquially. And I sort of want to explain that it's not because crit is inherently better than the other stats in the game, but it's just that crit is rare. Crit is only really attainable through some 5 stars have it. Okay, well, I've messed up my rotation because I'm talking. Some 5 stars have it as ascension stats. You get it on weapons, but honestly, that's kind of it. The only other reliable source that you can get crit is constellations and artifacts, whereas stats like damage percent and attack percent obviously are granted by the game's various buffers. Even elemental mastery, someone like Sucrose or Nahida, they have pretty strong elemental mastery buffing abilities. Crit, it's not the same. Crit, I think there's like 2 buffs that increase your team's crit rate. Oh wait, no, 3. There's Cloud Retainer, there's Rosaria, and there's Hu Tao, and they're all kind of like miserably low. Not to say that they're, you know, should be ignored. Actually, the Hu Tao one should be ignored. You shouldn't play around that. Should I be fighting this guy? Oh, yeah. He's boring. Maybe I don't want to fight him. So my point isn't that crit is like a numerically better stat that you should always prioritize over your other stats. It's just a rarer stat. It's much easier to, you know, buff your other stats through buffers and through I don't know, like buffing artifact sets, things like that, than it is to buff your crit rate externally. Or crit damage, you know. But crit damage buffs are even rarer than crit rate buffs. I forgot to talk, and I just kind of melted that guy. I can't be fighting 1.0 bosses. It's not that it's better, it's just that you really can't get crit from anywhere else, so you'll notice small differences in your crit a lot more quickly than you would notice another change in stats. Res Shred is like the same thing but double because it's limited to just a few characters. It's kind of like the multiplicative thing. Oh, like Risley has in his kit. You can sort of think of it in the same way. I'm like trying to talk, but all these bosses are just dying way too fast. This team does too much damage. Who has a lot of health? You do. I guess I can also talk on the walk to you. So the same thing kind of goes for Res Shred because characters don't naturally get access to Res Shred in their kits like they would crit or attack or damage percent. Crit or artifacts, really, I should say. Because Res Shred, high levels of Res Shred, are only available through Shilonen and the VV set. And I guess Farzan, but I mean flexible sources of Res Shred. It sort of applies the same principle on Farzan. The reason why she's so good is because she has that Res Shred. It's not that, oh, Res Shred is so great. Like, if another unit gained a buff that... Let me reword this. If another unit had a buff that was mathematically equivalent to Res Shred, it would be mathematically equivalent to Res Shred. Here's what it is Res Shred, it's like instead of adding on to any of your existing stats, like you would by buffing your attack with Bennett, or your damage percent with Farina, or your elemental mastery with Nahida, blah, blah, blah. Res Shred, it's like you're adding a whole new multiplier on top of everything else and making all your other stats even more powerful. And that's why it feels so good, especially when you start to stack it with other buffs. Like here with Benny, I'm easily getting 120k melts. Oh, Jesus. Jesus Christ. Easily getting 137k melts. Because I'm varying my damage along with the extra Res Shred. So yeah, math is not as hard as you think it is, at least in Genshin. I don't know about real life math. I'm still not good at that. If you like the video, like and comment, maybe subscribe if you're feeling so generous, and good luck balancing your stats.